Hey, how you doing?
Good. Actually, terrible. Terrible.
Oh yeah?
I'm quitting coffee and I feel terrible.
Caffeine withdrawals?
Oh, they're so bad. I mean, I've given up coffee a few times in the past, just for a few months here and there, but I've never had such bad withdrawals. I haven't had coffee since the 31st, and I've just had like 3 solid days of feeling terrible about life.
Oh man. You try to substitute with tea or anything? Or are you trying to just
Yeah,
quit
absolutely.
caffeine? Yeah.
I've got a organic super berries tea from the English tea shop in front of me right now. It's
Oh,
a
nice.
bright red tea. Tastes delicious.
So are you trying to try to cut some calories that way, or what encouraged that?
Not so much calories because I normally had black or just with a dash of milk or cream. So it was more just the ups and downs of caffeine through the day. I wanted to try and give that a miss for a little while.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Is that like a New Year resolution or something?
Yeah, I guess since it started on the 1st of January, you'd call it that. I'm not going to go the whole year, though. I'm just going to try and hit maybe 1 or maybe 2 months.
Right.
But I think what's made it extra bad this time is that I also decided to give up sugar for the month of January as well.
Oh man.
So it's this double whammy of cravings and withdrawals, and yeah.
I don't know how it is in Australia, but the food in the US is like it'd be impossible to avoid sugar because it's just in everything here.
I think it's very similar. I'm not far behind here. Yeah,
Yeah.
everywhere you look. If you're not eating just like raw fruit, not raw, but pure fruit, vegetables, and
Yeah.
I don't know, yeah, meat.
I know it's common for people to visit the US and be amazed like just how sweet like our bread is and stuff.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
The thing I noticed there was that the portion sizes were enormous compared
Oh,
to
really?
here. It was like a double size. Like your large drink in any size is massive. It's like a liter or more, isn't it?
I don't know the conversions to even tell you what a liter is.
Okay. Well, it's big. It's bigger than what we've got here. How large is your medium or small?
Do you have free drink refills in Australia?
No, we also don't have that. So there's no
Okay.
unlimited Coke or Pepsi or whatever.
Yeah, here in the US, since all the refills are free, basically all of our drinks are priced the same as well. Like if you go to a fast food restaurant, a small drink and a large drink are both $1. So it seems to encourage people to just get the larger option as well.
Yeah, for sure. Okay.
But
It's an easy trap to fall into, just drinking pure sugar then with your drink.
yeah. So I'm trying to cut that out. Actually, I guess you call it a resolution, but I'm taking the start of the year as an excuse to try to do a full year of like taking the Apple Watch more seriously and filling all my rings every day.
Nice. Okay.
So I've never really tried to or paid attention to it, but I fear it'd be kind of a fun thing to keep an eye on this year.
When I was trying that, the biggest challenge, or the most challenging ring was the green one, the exercise ring. To hit that every day, that was sometimes required more effort than I could put in.
Yeah, because right now, like, it's the end of the day for me. So my movement and stand rings. My movement's full. My stand ring is like an hour away, but I'm going to have to go spend 30 minutes on a treadmill or something to get my exercise ring filled for the day.
Do you have one in your house at least, or do you have to go out for that?
Yeah, I've got a treadmill at home, so not too bad.
Okay. Hey, if you want to jump on it while we're recording, just turn the gain right down
Turn the gain down some?
on your mic so we don't hear the treadmill running.
Oh, that would be pretty hard.
Good morning.
Good morning, James.
Welcome to the 25th episode. And also, you can't say we're a quarter of a century old, or a quarter of a century in counting up podcasts, but we're a year old. Can you believe?
Yeah, it's amazing.
What started as a simple post on the Apple subreddit, I guess December 2017. It turned into originally 4 of us recording, and then, as expected, a few people drop off over the months, and you're left with us, probably the perfect duo for discussing the top posts on the Apple subreddit every fortnight. That's a pretty respectable milestone to reach, I think, because I'd probably take a guess that the first year of something might be the hardest to get through.
Yeah, as someone who's done a bunch of, or tried to do creative things online before, different YouTube channels or what other artistic ventures, it's so easy to get discouraged after a month or two, and then that's the end of it. So to see it through for a year, I think is a big deal.
Yeah, the initial boost of enthusiasm is always the most exciting part, isn't it?
Yeah.
But then doing the hard yards is where it all counts.
And as long as we keep mixing things up, I think that enthusiasm can stick around. Like, I've really enjoyed doing the last few interviews. That's been a fun addition to the format.
Yeah, Christian, Will, and Punya, all great to have on. And we've got another guest next week as well, which we'll talk about next week. Oh, next fortnight, rather.
We're really excited to have him on. So I'd like to throw this out just because I thought it's funny. When we first discussed the idea of interviewing people on the show, the very first person I sent a message to was Steve Wozniak, because I'm just a big fan of him and his work, and I've seen him do appearances like on smaller YouTube channels in the past, so I thought there's maybe a chance. This was months ago. I sent email out inviting him on the show, and I got a email back from a member of his marketing team or something the next morning. I said it's his busy talking season and he wouldn't be available. And I left it at that for a couple months until I was discussing it with my significant other, and she said, why don't you ask when would be a better time and not his busy season? So I followed up with the email and I said, I understand he's always welcome. Is there a better time to reach out? And they emailed me back immediately with just the words, not possible.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did they even sign it off, or was that the entire email?
No. Yeah, that was it. Just those 2 words. So I really don't think he's... I don't know if he's not interested or if just whatever this member of his team was really not interested. But yeah, a little disappointing, but a little funny as well.
Yeah, we're going to have to try and get a line directly to him. Or maybe it is him just hiding behind the name of someone else so he can send out these cruel, heart-rending emails.
Yeah, it's like, they'll even answer the question. I said, when would be a better time to reach out? They said, not possible. So, oh well.
Okay.
So
that's all right.
Grow the show, be so big that he begs to be on our show.
That's right. That'll be the day.
Yeah.
Shall we hit the top topic on the Apple subreddit in the past week? There is actually probably one on there right now that's going to top this, but we'll save that for the end. Currently, it's from SpencerDaily.com. It's a post. Have you heard of this site before, Spencer Daily? I hadn't come across it.
Yeah, I've never heard of them.
Okay. The subline on the website is, let's be honest, this is just another WordPress site, so maybe it's not a big one. But the post is, in 2019, Apple needs to change iPhone's call UI because robocalls are killing us. So there are 2 subjects that he kind of brings up in this one headline. One is the iPhone's call UI, how it takes over the entire screen. And the second one is robocalls are killing us. And a combination of the 2, I think, is what's generated most of this frustration. So should we tackle number 1, which is the iPhone call UI, which hasn't really changed since, well, certainly not much since iOS 7, but not even that much since iPhone OS 1.
Yeah, it's interesting.
What do you think of it?
It's interesting that they've left the call UI untouched for so long. When they had the big revamp around iOS 7, where they stopped having all notifications like take over your whole display. Actually, we had banner notifications in iOS 6. But yeah, the advent of banner notifications, and with them not having to take over your display, we had to either either a cancel button or a tap into the app option, and that was it. You couldn't do a quick reply or anything else. Seeing those banner notifications, it seems like pushing calls to that same format makes a lot of sense, especially when the phone is probably one of the least used apps on iPhones nowadays. I remember back in, 2010, 2011, using jailbreak tweaks to do exactly that with my iPhone. Even back then, calls taking up the whole display was frustrating.
Why could it be that Apple has left it taking up the whole screen? The only thing that jumps to mind is that they are catering to people who aren't very techie. I can definitely remember back to times when I've seen people using their phones and they just, I'm talking about old people here, they don't actually see the notifications pop down from the top of the screen. It's right. Like, if they're focusing on typing something, then the top half of the screen may as well not exist.
Yeah. That's an easy accessibility option to turn on. Like that, I totally get that, and maybe even it should be full screen by default. But all notifications have the different options for banner or full screen notifications, and I think calling could be exactly the same, with maybe our current implementation as a default for those people who wouldn't even know to go into the settings.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So currently, yeah, the options when you go into the notification center, it kind of looks like you can turn on just banners for the phone, which is a little bit annoying, but because of what it's actually saying is that this is the notification options for missed phone calls. So that's a little bit deceptive, and I don't think it would take too much just to change that. I bet there are some third-party vendors that do like this take over your whole screen as well, because they can use... Is it Call Kit that lets them kind of get their fingers into the phone UI?
Yeah.
Yeah, so apps like Messenger, WhatsApp, whatever, they can also utilize this full screen. So I wonder if there's any pressure from those apps from those vendors to keep it how it is.
I think something that would kind of be a nice middle ground, I think that would make a lot of people feel better, is if there was just a dismiss call button where you didn't send someone to voicemail immediately so they know that you hung up on them, but you could still dismiss the full screen notification. It'd still be a hassle, but I think a lot of people's complaints is that a call takes over their screen, and it's like their grandma, and they don't want to send their grandma to voicemail, so they just pretend they're not at the phone.
But if you just ignore the ring, it goes to voicemail anyway. It's more about
Right.
letting grandma know you don't want to talk to her, isn't it?
Well, yeah, exactly. You don't want them to know that you've consciously sent them to voicemail. You didn't just miss the call. But if you do that, you have to sit there and watch your phone ring the whole time, which is annoying and takes you out of whatever you're doing for a while. And also is like kind of like guilt-inducing to stare at your contact photo of your grandma looking at you for a minute and a half while it rings.
And especially annoying if you're partway through a game, especially an online game, and you just get kicked out for those 15 seconds.
For anyone who plays Fortnite on their phone.
Yeah, Fortnite, exactly. Currently, what are your options? They are to press the lock button. Does that hang up the call? And then the volume down button, I think, mutes the ringer. And then you've just got the on-screen hang up or answer the call.
Right. Or with the text replies or whatever.
Ah, that's right, text replies.
Yeah.
Speaking of text replies, actually, this is more on the next part of it, which is robocalls, but have you seen Google's implementation of the call screening?
Yeah, I have. I've seen a few people playing around with it, and I saw their demo when it was announced a few months ago. It seems like a really impressive thing, and I would love to have that on iOS. I probably know it's never coming with how far behind Siri is, but it'd be something nice to have.
Yeah, so basically it lets you pick up the phone, but your Google Assistant on your phone will talk to the caller instead of you talking to the caller. And then you'll see real-time translated what the caller has said. So you can immediately determine if it's a spam or a legit caller. But then you can also ask them questions back just by tapping on little prompts on your screen, and Google Assistant will talk back to them. So it's kind of halfway between AI and just you choosing options, choose your own adventure in text, which text to voice.
Yeah. I have noticed, because the only time I've ever seen someone use it, they're like showing it off to people, it is a little delayed between them talking, Google finish transcribing that text, and then you hitting a response and the response being read to the person on the other end. There's a couple second pause, which makes it feel a little less natural, although anyone getting screened will immediately know it's a computer, so maybe that'll be okay. But I imagine a lot of people are just going to hang up on it.
Yeah, and that's probably half the point, isn't it? Actually, funnily, the demo that I watched of it, I didn't really notice much of a delay. It seemed to be pretty much real time.
Really? Maybe it was just the cell connections in my area. I'm not sure.
Oh, did you see it in person?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to say that your experience has more veracity than mine, which was a YouTube video.
Oh. Okay.
All right.
How bad are the spam calls in like Australia? Do you get a lot of them?
I used to get heaps. I used to get at least one a day, sometimes multiple every day, which sounds like, judging by the answers in the thread, that's a pretty common experience. But I got so sick of them, probably around maybe April last year, that I just permanently put my phone on call divert to voicemail, so my phone would never ring. So I did it at the telco end, like not at the phone. So it was on divert to voicemail from May through to October, I think.
Okay.
And then I turned it off, and I don't really get junk calls anymore. Maybe
Interesting.
Maybe 2 a week. So it's dropped significantly to the point that I don't feel I should put my phone back on call divert now. I'm happy to have it ring.
Right. I average about 3 a day.
Wow,
Sometimes
okay.
Lighter days, but more often than not, there's heavier days. So it's pretty inconvenient, especially when robocallers now, at least around me, are like spoofing their phone number. So the area code and the first 3 digits are the same as mine, so it looks like a local number. And then, I've just gotten to the point where I ignore it if they're not in my contacts, because 99% of the time it's a spam call.
So there are apps you can use to look up the phone number in a spam database, kind of like an anti-spam app, but for phone calls on your phone. And I haven't tried those because I would say most of the calls I get are from blocked or private numbers.
Oh, really?
So they don't tend to help in that case. So it's interesting that you've got this spoofing problem because, is blocked numbers a thing in the US?
We can block numbers, but I've never gotten a blocked number that was a spam call.
That's interesting.
So
I wonder why your spammers haven't worked this angle yet.
Maybe it's because people have started ignoring blocked calls in my area, so they're gone to spoofing the phone number instead. It works better.
Right, okay.
I'm using an app on my phone called Truecaller, and I actually got it originally when I was on Android, because Android years ago had the ability for like call kit like functionality before Apple, and it intercepts the call and runs it through a database, and if it matches a fraudulent number, it blocks that call for you automatically. And it used to work great for me, but the problem now is that every single time a spammer makes a call, they're making up a fake number, so the app has become less and less useful for me recently. And you have the option afterwards, you can add them to the block call list, but it really doesn't do anything to reduce the number of spam calls when it's different every time.
And in that case, you could potentially be blocking a number that you do want to get a call from if it's just a spoof number to begin with.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, it's not really a way to win this in my mind unless I get a brand new phone number and hope no one has it yet.
Yeah. I was contemplating doing that actually.
Really?
Actually, at that point where I was going phone free for a little while, I thought, I've got a landline number, like a landline number in my house with that's just, a cable that's not plugged into anything. I thought, hey, that could actually be useful. Let me plug that in. Keep in mind that I've never ever used this number in my entire life. It was just assigned to me randomly when I signed up for my internet plan when I moved into this house. Never been plugged into a phone before. I plugged it into the phone, like the cordless phone. It was getting spam calls from day one. Can you believe?
Really?
Yep. Day one, the phone rang. I thought, hell, I haven't given this number to anyone.
Yeah.
And of course, you get that little thing you always get from a spam call, at least here, is like a 3-second pause and then a crackly hello.
Ours, all like robocallers. It's very, very rare you get a person, and when it is, it's usually some kind of insurance scam. Then I don't know why people do that, but
all right. So if you answer a real person, is it someone with an American accent or overseas or what?
It's been so long. Usually, in my experience, it's been an American accent.
Right.
If it's a person, more often than not, it's a robot. So I'm not sure how some of these people. I see videos all the time of people like it seems like a lot of Indian scammers, or at least there's some stigma about a lot of scammers are from India. And
that's what I was going to say. 99% of the spam calls I get will be someone from the subcontinent. Yeah, wanting to chat.
No, that's not something I've experienced. So, but maybe that's my spam call list blocking those people, and it's just the bots who are like trying random numbers and calling every single number that are getting through, and that's why I've seen those.
Yeah, could be.
So maybe I put my phone number too many places.
I don't know. Where have you published it?
Oh man, I've had this phone number since I was in middle school. So back when I had no regard for like privacy of my personal information, and back when it wasn't as big a deal, you could give your phone number out to people and it wasn't being sold across the internet, 10 or 15 years ago.
Yeah, so, it didn't used to be a big deal to put your phone number and email address like on a public-facing website.
Yeah. So it's probably everywhere. Probably every spam company has my phone number by now.
So there's a comment in the thread from Strawby S, or Straubs, who says that their boss just has her phone on Do Not Disturbs, and then there's a setting where only contacts can still call you, which isn't a bad idea, except it also blocks every single notification that's coming through.
Right.
So if you do like to have a Zen-like phone experience with only calls from contacts, then there's always that option. But I don't think it's going to suit everyone.
Yeah, and honestly, at least for me, my contacts are the people that I don't know. I don't worry about getting a hold of them, but it's like the random doctor's appointment I have, or I don't know, my health insurance needs to get a hold of me. Those are the numbers I don't have in my phone that I really want to make sure I get. So
yeah, exactly.
Blocking those calls seems counterproductive in that case. So, or if I have my car in the shop, I don't have the shop's number, but they're going to call me, and I need to make sure I get that call. So
number one phone number in my book is the mechanic where my car gets serviced.
Oh, really?
Mostly because they spam me all the time with your car is 6 months since its last service. Yeah, it's only gone 5,000 Ks, so I'm not coming in, sorry. Man, they're so proactive there. It's annoying. So
my guy is just like a hole in the wall. He probably doesn't even have a system to keep track of when the last time I was there. So
on to the most interesting topic of the day. AirPower officially misses the 2018 deadline. Apple is silent on its status. How much was a surprise? I think once we hit December 19, the last Friday before Christmas,
yeah,
I had zero expectations for anything after that.
Yeah, I would probably say I still had a little bit of a hope going into December, and then by the middle of December, it was basically confirmed not to happen. The more surprising thing to me is Apple not saying anything. I think I mentioned the last show. I mean, of course, they're not obligated to tell us, but they seem to have had a trend recently of being a little more open about when they need a little more time, like with AirPods or what's another example? I'm going all the way back to 2010. I was going to say the white iPhone 4. They were really transparent about that taking a long time to come out.
Yeah, and also pre-announcing the Mac Pro years in advance.
Yeah, so I'm surprised they haven't said anything, and I don't know if that's a good sign, like it's coming really soon, or if it's a bad sign and they're just trying to make us forget it ever happened.
So, scenario one, it is coming out, yet they didn't announce something. That seems the least likely to me, because it would mean that they don't know when it's coming out. And after, well over a year, you'd think that the roadmap would be back on track, or at least on track if it was going to come out.
Right.
Scenario two, it's not coming out and they didn't say something. It's probably a little more likely, because they're not just going to go full Bloomberg and pretend it doesn't exist, surely. And scenario three is one that I've just made up, is that they can't say whether it's coming out. They're stuck in some sort of dispute regarding the release of it or the construction of it.
Yeah.
What do you think of my proposition?
I mostly agree with what you're saying. I feel like if it was going to come out, they would say something to keep people excited about it. I can't think of a single time, at least in recent history, where Apple's announced a product and then never released it. So it's hard to say what they would do in that situation, but I can kind of imagine them just never mentioning it again. Because drawing attention to the fact that it's not coming out, a lot of people who aren't tech people never knew it existed, but them coming out and saying this product isn't coming out, that's going to get articles out to people who otherwise would never have heard of AirPower. Okay,
that's a good viewpoint. Yeah, if you're not following Apple, then you never knew it existed. But
right.
You're right. If they announce it's not coming out after it is, that's going to headline. At least, it's definitely going to headline the tech press, and maybe it'll leak into the morning shows to the general populace.
Yeah, I saw a great comment probably a week ago. It was on a post. I know we're going to get to this later, but it was on a post about a bent iPad Pro, and they said, "Hey, if bent iPads meet Apple standards, then hot AirPower mats should too, because I really want my AirPower mat."
And if you want a good running commentary on AirPower, follow Apollo Zach on Twitter, which is Zach Hall from 9 to 5 Mac. He's got very regular tweets dissing AirPower in one way or another.
I mean, someone needs to call Apple out. The tech journalists need to stay on them and say, we need an update. Tell us something. Don't let them put it under the rug.
Going back 20 odd shows, I said, you should definitely follow the creator of Apollo on Twitter. His name is Apollo Zach. I just mistakenly pieced together that Apollo Zach and Apollo the app were related because they were both tweeting Apple stuff.
Oh.
One was an Apple app and one was tweeting stuff. But Apollo Zach is, an editor, writer at 9 to 5. Nothing to do with Christian or the app. So that's a correction 9 months in the future. Sorry about that.
Huh. I don't even remember that. But
I should have never said anything. Should have done a full Apple.
Yeah, that never happened.
I'm not sure I've got much else to say about AirPower. Do you want to move on?
Yeah, I think we've drove AirPower into the grave at this point. We've been talking about it since the start of the podcast.
Yeah, it's going to be AirPower rising from the grave if it ever comes out.
Yeah.
Number 3 post, the third top post, it probably would have been the top post if we'd maybe done the show last week. And the title of the post is Apple's former marketing director returned his bent iPad Pro on Monday, saying he's unhappy with Apple's handling of the matter.
Mm-hmm.
My first comment is that the capitalization of this article is terrible. The most random words have been capitalized. Bent, handling, former.
That looks correct.
Yet unhappy and saying are not capitalized.
Oh, I see. Okay. Not the article headline, the post. Okay.
Yeah, sorry. The other weird thing is that this is a cross post from the Surface subreddit, like the Microsoft Surface subreddit. It's the strangest post. But yeah, we haven't talked about the bent iPad Pro, so here's our chance.
Yeah.
Do you want to recap?
Yeah, it's been a really weird ride recently. It started with maybe a month ago, Jerry Rig Everything, who's kind of a famous YouTuber for putting products through extreme stress tests and also really disliking Apple, bent an iPad Pro in half and said it was way too easy and Apple put too many weak points on it and this was an issue. And at the time, he was the first person to say anything. A lot of people jumped to the defense of Apple and said, all tablets that big are going to bend and you're ridiculous. I even saw some videos of other YouTubers like Snazzy Labs bending Android tablets and saying, look, all tablets bend. But then people started getting more iPad Pros out in the wild and people were unboxing iPads with slight bends in them straight out of the box, which was concerning. And then I don't know who wrote the article. Mac Rumors? Someone wrote an article about iPads bending. And Dan Riccio from Apple came out and gave a press release saying that the bends were normal and weren't defects. But I think there was some misleading being done with that because people were quoting Dan Riccio and saying, the bends that are within our standards are 4 microns or something. And then they were posting this picture of an iPad with a very noticeable bend. So it appeared that Dan Riccio was saying iPads with this significant of a bend are acceptable by our guidelines, but that bend was way more significant than what he stated was in the acceptable range. So then people were getting mad because Apple was saying that the bend was okay, and Apple stores wouldn't necessarily take them back if they were bent. And I don't know. Then it kind of died down. People got quiet about it. And at this point, I'm curious if there was just a bad batch maybe that made it out of production that had bends in it and we won't see this again, or I don't know. It's kind of in limbo right now with the quality. It feels like an iPhone 6 situation again, where next year we're going to get the same design but more reinforced.
Yeah, this whole news cycle was as weird as the title of this post. Yeah, exactly right. You'd have these pictures of these insanely bent iPads, a good half a centimeter bent, sitting on a table, and it's practically a banana. And then the quotes from Dan Riccio saying 0.4 of a millimeter is our tolerance.
Right.
I find it hard to believe that the iPads where you can put it on a table and play Seesaw are at that tolerance. Now, I haven't seen anyone measure their bend and then try and take it back to Apple and get knocked back.
Right.
But,
and there was a big outcry about that because they said, well, now that they've came out and said this, Apple stores aren't going to take the iPads back, and everyone got mad about that. But yeah, every post I've seen, people have been able to take it back no problem. So
yeah, that's right. People were mad because they were saying that previously if you tried to take an iOS device back to Apple with a bend in it, they would often refuse the service. And I've certainly experienced that myself. I think it was the 6 Plus was the most bendable phone ever.
Right.
And took it back for something unrelated to the screen and was knocked back for the bend. I can't remember what point I was trying to make at the start of this sentence.
Yeah, you said usually they don't take bent products.
Right, yeah. But as is the case in this post, the former marketing director, maybe he gets a little bit of special treatment, maybe not. I'm not sure if he just walked into an Apple store and, incognito or not. But he certainly had his replaced, and it doesn't seem to suggest he had any problems getting it replaced either. I imagine if you've got visible bending, then Apple is probably going to take it back. And the 4 microns apparently is an even tighter tolerance than on previous iPads, and yet no one's been complaining about it before today. So like you said, almost certainly a bad batch of iPads went out, missed the tolerance measurement, and spiked this whole news cycle, which is what we love, isn't it?
I think anyone who receives a bent iPad has nothing to worry about. And I think the concern really is with how durable these are going to be. And a year from now, coming in and out of bags and being moved around, if other iPads are going to bend that easily. Something I didn't mention earlier is they mentioned that the bends out of the box are a result of the manufacturing process, the metal being cooled rapidly as it's being formed, causes it to bend. So hopefully this isn't an indication of weakness of the product overall, but more of just, a bad manufacturing batch.
You're really good at enunciating ideas, I have to say. Here's me stumbling across trying to explain a simple thing about my iPhone, and then you come out with that.
Well, thanks, James.
A certain amount of care I find is taken for each size class of product. Like, I would say people would care about a laptop more than an iPad, and would take more care with an iPad than an iPhone. So, we'll see after a few years of throwing it in and out of bags. I think people certainly take more care of it than their iPhone. They don't typically walk around on the street holding it, so it's not going to be hitting the ground too much.
Right.
And it's normally used like on a couch, or as with the iPad Pros, connected to a keyboard case on a bench. So, like you said, after a few years, see how they stand up. Hopefully nothing like the iPhone 6 Plus.
Yeah, and with the rising price of the iPad Pro, people might be taking even more care of that than a laptop. You can get a MacBook for like $1,100, and the new iPad Pro, if you want it maxed out, it's $2,000. So I can't imagine what it is there.
It's a lot, yeah.
Yeah.
Take your price and times it by, I don't know, 1.3 or 1.4.
Man, that's crazy.
Moving on to the next post, which is a self-post by Marcus413, who is, I have to say, an iTunes or Apple Music power user. So his post is, Apple really needs to give more attention to Apple Music. And then he lists a dozen or so improvements he would suggest to Apple Music. Did you go through these one by one?
I did go through them, and actually my take on most of them is like, I don't really need most of these, but I was wondering if we could go through them and see which ones we thought actually mattered.
Yeah, exactly what I want to do, because there are certainly good ideas in there, and then some things are just a little out in the weeds. So number 1, play counts for songs don't sync properly across devices, iPhone, Mac, and Apple TV. Now, I have to admit that back in the days of Winamp on Windows XP, I was all about play counts. And even when I transferred from Winamp to iTunes, in the days of the iPod, I made sure to bring play counts across with me. And that was,
Really?
not an easy task most of the time, like manually keying in play counts for thousands of songs.
Yeah.
Looking back, it's certainly time wasted. Because I'm not sure if it's because I've lost interest or because iTunes and Apple Music just don't advertise the play counts as readily or as easily. I mean, they're certainly there. Or if it's because back when I first subscribed to iTunes Match, my play counts just went mental. Because that was the start of the bad play counts in my books. So it's one of those factors. I just don't care about it anymore. So this point is getting a no from me.
Yeah. Play counts is not something I personally have ever paid attention to or worried about. I'm sure there's a niche of people who really care about like which songs they listen to most, but I can't imagine that's the majority. So I would say that that's not important either.
No handoff feature.
This is interesting. I see what he says where he has a queue of songs on his Mac or Apple TV, and he wants to be able to quickly get that to his iPhone. I have a different use case than him apparently, because in my opinion, Apple Music and really any audio has a great kind of handoff where you can AirPlay it to any other device. And my iPhone controls 100% of my music. I never play it from my Apple TV. So handing off is as easy as switching the output device. It's not transferring a playlist between devices.
Right. My handoff is I'm listening to music in bed with AirPods. I walk into the living room and AirPlay it to the HomePod, and then I get in the car and the Bluetooth takes over. That's my handoff, and it works perfectly.
Yeah, and I think, again, that's probably the majority. I can't imagine most people are trying to navigate their music UI in the Apple TV. Maybe more of a case for on your Mac if you're working from a desk, but still, I can see where handoff could be useful to some people, but I never even noticed it wasn't there. So,
no BPM data for songs. This is similar to my first case. I used to look at it. I used to use third-party services to update my metadata, my ID3 tags with BPM, but not in a long time now, and I can't imagine using it if it even was there.
Really? This is like news to me. I didn't even know people cared about this kind of stuff. And I had no idea you can even keep track of that in metadata. Yeah, I can, like, where you mentioned like creating smart playlists, sounds like a cool use. I don't know if needing exact BPM data is necessary for creating playlists that have like similar tempos or not. I could see where you probably wouldn't necessarily need it. I mean, yeah, it's not something I've ever wanted or needed. What happened to Genius playlists? Do you remember those?
They're still there, aren't they?
I mean, they're kind of like, I guess, replaced by the new playlist that Apple Music does. But I can't like pick a song and then say, well, maybe I can with Apple Music. But I can't pick a song and say, make me a playlist from my library of similar songs. Kind of gimmicky, but I just forgot it existed.
I'm looking at iTunes right now. I've got 6 Genius mixes. Alt singer-songwriter.
Can you create
pop rock?
Can you create a new one though? Like you pick a song and say, make me a Genius mix? Maybe it's just, I haven't looked in a long time.
Let me have a look. There's Create Station, so
probably similar.
I think that's the most similar thing. So yeah, you're right. It's not using music in my library. It's just using music from Apple Music.
Right. Okay. I forgot that existed until we were discussing it.
No higher tier plan for hi-fi audio. He suggests $19.99 per month, and you would get, I suppose, streaming FLAC or ALAC.
Yeah.
I might use that if I had something better than the HomePod to listen to, but the HomePod quality isn't going to benefit from anything more than like a 256 kilobit AAC.
Does Spotify have some kind of similar tier? Is that where this idea comes from?
I'm not sure. You should tell me. You're the ex-Spotify user.
No, I'm not.
Oh, you're not?
I mean, I never paid for it. I played around with it when it first came out, but I never subscribed.
Okay.
So
I love the way you said that. Like in disgust. You spat the words out. The higher tier hi-fi audio plan, I think that's a good idea. I think there would be a lot of people who would make use of that and be able to listen to the high quality audio. So I think it's a yes.
I'm sure there's audio files. I guess the question is, does Apple have the high quality audio to stream, or will they have to?
I'm pretty sure that artists have to submit their files as lossless audio.
Oh, okay.
So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I'm sure a lot of people would eat that up.
Doesn't have end of year stats like Spotify.
I mean,
yeah, I don't really care.
Yeah.
Carry on.
I mean, maybe like screen time, but for Apple Music, same idea.
Okay. Yeah, if you're into music, yeah, it might be nice to see.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it doesn't matter either way for me, but it would be a nice to have, I guess.
Improve track listing and results in search. For example, when I search Bohemian Rhapsody, the proper album version is the 6th result. Yeah, I'm definitely on board with this because I find that the search results in Apple Music are usually, they're usually okay, but not always okay. And I do like the recent addition of searching by lyrics. That's come in handy a lot. Yeah. But it's no Google search for music.
Yeah, I'm going to have to take your word for it. I very, very rarely search for music, especially manually. If I'm listening to like a new song and I want it, I'll just ask Siri to play it for me. So I trust whatever she comes up with.
Music videos aren't in great quality. Well, apparently they're only in 720p, not 1080p, and I can't say I've noticed. I am someone who watches music videos through Apple Music just because I hate watching them on YouTube and then getting interrupted by ads all the time. Mm-hmm. But I think the experience could be greatly improved because firstly, they're tricky to find, and secondly, they're often not like an infinite playlist like you would find on YouTube. Mm-hmm. And the selection itself isn't very big.
Yeah, I've never watched a music video on Apple Music, so
Okay.
I think 720p is probably pretty pitiful for anything that's being streamed in 2019. So I'm on board with saying it needs to be bumped to 1080 at least.
The rest of the points are fairly niche, I would say. Is there anything you wanted to pick out in particular?
Just scanning them. I mean, a lot of them are about creating smart playlists based on things like time of day, or he mentions tempo and BPM again. I'll be fine. There's like nothing on this list that I desperately need, but I'm probably not a person to ask because I am probably the most casual Apple Music user in the world who I listen to my library 90% of the time, and the other percent of the time I just listen to whatever playlist Apple makes for me. So,
and I think that's the reason that most of these features haven't made it from iTunes to Apple Music or are problematic now is because most people are in the same boat as us, fairly casual listeners or users of Apple Music.
Right.
You pick your album and you hit play. Although it is annoying that something like smart playlists exists and worked well in iTunes, and now it's more of a shambles, I guess you would call it.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure if smart playlists come across to Apple Music on iOS, do they? We certainly can't create them on there.
I honestly don't know what a smart playlist is, James. So
No,
I'll take your word for it.
I just checked my iTunes. I've got like 10 playlists and none of them are smart. So
Yeah.
maybe it's time to move on.
Okay.
So this is an article from 9 to 5 Mac, and its title is Apple Exited the Home Wi-Fi Market at the Wrong Time. An article by Brad Chambers. And the premise of the article is that our homes are filled up more now than ever with Wi-Fi connected devices. And now is the time that we need a simple access point to connect them, or a simple, reliable Airport Express. Back when Apple entered the Wi-Fi market, I would say their devices were considered expensive compared to what was available. Yeah. They certainly were. But they were also amazingly simple to set up. There was no IP address to configure them. It was just an app on your Mac or eventually on iOS as well.
Right.
But over time, other companies have slowly caught up. There are companies like Eero and Unify who have devices that can also be configured with apps. But these devices have even leapfrogged Apple's prices usually, and they're even more expensive. So that's a long way of saying, of Bradley saying that, of me saying that Bradley is saying that it was the wrong time for Apple to pull their Airport lineup from the market. And I'm going to straight up say I disagree.
Oh, really?
What's your take?
I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum. I've been saying this for the last 4 years, since it was like first rumored or announced that Apple had ceased development on their Airport devices. Because it was 2015, 2016 when I switched out my Airport Extreme for Google's Wi-Fi mesh network solution, and at that time I was saying that this is the market that Apple needs to be in, especially when they have things like, and it's mentioned in the article, but things like HomeKit, where they need a central hub at your house to manage your HomeKit devices, and they've delegated that to Apple TV or HomePod or even an iPad left at home to manage. But if Apple was controlling the network, then you wouldn't need another device. You'd just need your Wi-Fi router to handle your smart home devices. And Wi-Fi itself has gotten faster since it came kind of into the mainstream, early 2000s. But other than that, has had very few innovations in that market. And then this last few years, it's really started to flourish, just with every device being Wi-Fi connected now. Innovation in that space was necessary, and the mesh networks and everything else is, I don't know, it's rejuvenated the market, and I think that Apple could be a leader in doing that, and I would much rather have their products doing it than Google's.
Why? Do you care about privacy or something? My first argument against it is that this is another product segment that Apple would have to commit resources to, and they've already branched out, I guess, recently. Recently was relative, but with AirPods and Apple Watch, and you add Airport again, and suddenly the Magic Quadrant is more like a game of checkers.
Yeah.
So wouldn't you rather see their resources, the great minds, dedicated to something a little more exciting than a Wi-Fi router.
So this just brought to mind a rumor that came about after they'd announced HomePod, but it had yet to be released, and it had been slightly delayed. A lot of people were speculating that Apple was building airport technology into HomePods. And then you have kind of, for people who spend the money on multiple HomePods, you have an automatic mesh network, assuming they put the right technology in there, kind of like how they used to do backup hard drives in the airport extremes. Now instead, or time capsules, I guess what they called it. But instead of that, now you have these devices that are useful in and of themselves for being smart home speakers, but then also control your Wi-Fi network. And they're going to be automatically in the rooms you use most, where you care about having the most signal. And they can communicate with each other not only for making your surround sound audio, but also giving you complete home coverage of your network.
Sounds like another factor that could, delay products, though, another thing to worry about. If you were the owner, you'd have to not just worry about what sounds best, but where gets the best Wi-Fi coverage.
That's true.
It sounds like a complexity that I wouldn't want to deal with.
That's fair. Yeah, I don't know. I think the market can do without Apple, but I will miss being able to manage I can do similar things through an app for my Google network, but I'll miss being able to have it all in the ecosystem, I guess.
Yeah, that was going to be my second point, is that the market can do without Apple. Apple was filling a gap where there was really nothing at the time.
Right.
Whereas now, with all the competitors out there, that the gap doesn't really exist anymore. Although you could say there was a gap between like the $50 ones and the $350 ones where Apple normally sat.
I mean, they had the Airport Express, which kind of was a happy medium.
Yeah, true.
So, and yeah, they had no option really but to come into the market in the early 2000s when they did, since Apple was the first company to sell a consumer laptop with Wi-Fi built in off the shelf. They had to supply some kind of wireless networking to let you even use that feature. So,
whereas now, even the standard, like the bog standard modem router that you get from your ISP is typically good enough. I mean, crazily enough, that's what I'm running here. It's just the standard one that came from my ISP.
Oh, really?
Which in previous years I never would have done, but it's good enough now. I still have to configure it using an IP address, but besides that, I've got no complaints.
Right. And my use case, just because I have home security cameras like in and outside the house, I basically have to have the mesh option to put a node in every corner so the outside cameras can all get signal. But otherwise, it'd probably be overkill for me as well.
Any other thoughts?
Probably not about Wi-Fi.
Should we wrap up and move on to pre-show?
Post-show?
Yeah. Let's do that instead.
Okay.
All right. I'm James VDM on Reddit and on Twitter.
And I'm Jellywoot on Reddit and Twitter.
And we have a Patreon, patreon.com/The Apple Show. And mere hours ago from when before we're recording, Tim Cook wrote a little letter to Apple investors, and I assume you gave it a little read since you added it to the post-show notes.
Yeah, well, I knew if we didn't touch on it, this is going to be the big headline, in the next couple of days, so I thought we could get a jump on it.
Yeah, sure is. So the big number is that revenue. This is the guidance, by the way, sorry, I gave the title of it. I didn't really say what it was about. So Tim Cook has given a letter to, an open letter to investors with a new guidance for what the first quarter results of 2019 are going to be. So they typically give a guidance, when was it, about a month or so ago? I can't remember. Mm-hmm. But they have significantly downgraded their guidance. Revenue down $5 to $9 billion, which is the big number.
I was trying to think when the last time Apple's ever come out and said something like this was, and nothing has come to mind.
I did scan the comments, and other people had asked a similar question, and the answer was, what you thought. I don't think they've ever done this before.
It's usually the exact opposite. Market speculation is always iPhone's doing bad this year. They're going to report, the first decline, in the last 5 or 8 years or whatever. And then they've always come out, like way ahead of expectations. So for them to even preemptively say like, hey, don't get your hopes up this time, like that's huge.
Yeah, that's right. The guidance is always extremely conservative, and then they smash it.
Right.
Or at least top it. Interestingly, the letter, the press release, is actually full of information about why this is.
Right.
And to give like a one-line headline, if Tim Cook was going to write one, is that the Chinese economy is doing so badly that basically all the revenue loss is out of China. There are a couple of other secondary options, a strong US dollar, and there was an interesting one about fewer iPhone upgrades as well.
I'm really hoping that this extends to more than just the iPhone lineup. Like, I'm never one to like wish Apple does poorly, but I know a majority of the community have been pretty frustrated with the significant price increases across their entire lineup last year. And I'm hoping that this sends a strong message that consumers won't tolerate that increase, and they're going to have to find a happy medium somewhere.
I know I can speak personally. I have rejected the price increases of the latest iPhone, and look at me, I'm rocking an iPhone 6 instead of a XS after being a first day adopter for, ever since the iPhone 4. And I mean, not to float my boat, but I typically do what other people are going to do. Like, my family's probably going to follow suit. If I set a precedent of not buying something, then they would typically follow my lead in that case.
Oh, really?
Here's one family at least that's completely rejected the increase in pricing.
I mean, I still kind of a sucker. I bought the iPhone XS Max and the high configuration, but I still haven't upgraded an Apple Watch, even though I'm really tempted. I haven't been able to justify purchasing that yet. Also, usually a day one purchase for me is the new iPad Pros, which I have, even though I've been really impressed by the design and played with it multiple times. Like, every time I go into like a Best Buy or something, I play with it. But I just can't stomach the $2,000 price point. That would be where I'd want to come in. So,
speaking of the Apple Watch, that market, the wearables market, which includes Apple Watch and AirPods, grew 50% year over year. So it's not all bad news.
Yeah.
And there's also growth in the Mac market as well.
And I'm surprised to see, I just pulled up Apple's stock, which I never look at, but looks like it might have taken a little bit of a hit after the press release was published, but it almost completely bounced back by the end of the day. So Apple hasn't really taken much of a stock hit because of this, surprisingly.
Maybe that hit will come once the earnings report's actually published in January. Oh, it is January, whenever it comes out.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see some kind of, unless they're fooling us and it's going to still exceed expectations. They had to lower expectations enough that they could still exceed them when it actually came out.
Yeah, it's just a policy, isn't it?
Yeah. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see some bit of a stock drop afterwards, which is, again, different than usual. Usually the stocks drop right before the announcement, and they announce and it skyrockets.
Right.
So, yeah, I don't know. Hopefully this triggers a change in policy for them and they don't just blame China and move on.
Well, they didn't just blame China, because how about this line? We believe there are other factors broadly impacting our iPhone performance, blah, blah, blah. Some customers are taking advantage of significantly reduced pricing for iPhone battery replacements. How do you read that?
Man, I don't know.
Do you read that previously our phones didn't last long enough and people were forced to upgrade? Now they no longer have to upgrade.
I've given Apple the benefit of the doubt on this the whole time. I think they had a tough choice to make, either throttling or crashing, and they chose the one that gave a more consistent experience. They should have been more transparent about it, but I don't think they necessarily did anything wrong with their throttling.
They're not a malicious company, are they?
I mean, they're a company, so profits are the only thing that matters to them and their shareholders. But I like to think that there's some semblance of good, and they weren't trying to make products deliberately obsolete, especially with things like iOS 12, which have rejuvenated older products.
That's an excellent point, because maybe that alone but maybe that was a significant contributor to the lack of upgrades. Suddenly people can use an iPhone 5, SE, 6, and use it on a day-to-day without being extremely frustrated with it.
Yeah, if you went to upgrade your iPhone and you saw it was going to cost $1,500 to do it, but then also that same day your phone got significantly faster, I could see where a lot of people would opt to not upgrade. So.
Exactly. Yeah, so it's kind of weird. It's interesting what Apple's going to do. Well, it's going to take a little while before we see. It's going to be probably until the next product launch, whenever that is, to see if they've actually wound back the prices some.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, for me too. For everyone who's buying an Apple product, fingers crossed.
Yeah.